Hello, how's it hanging? It is I, the Rat Daddy, and today in RimWorld, my friends, we are going to be founding and rebuilding the Shattered Empire once more. Whereas they were once the regal, majestic, royal, governing body of this planet, they are now but a sad, pathetic shell of their former selves. Although there are still quite a few flourishing, thriving imperial cities, there are more and more that are left in ruin, abandoned to time. But we plan on fixing that. We're starting off with 3 colonists who are pretty well educated in the Shattered Empire and who have decided to try to start their own, as we literally just talked about, of course, but that does also mean that we are going to be starting off with the standard crash-landed loadout with all the resources and everything that comes with it. A quick disclaimer before we begin as well, I have done a very similar video to this with a basically identical title in the past, except that video was only for our clone army series and was to do a bit of lore building and to show what's going on around the galaxy, of course. This is completely separate and not part of that empire, unfortunately. Nevertheless, let us begin on our epic reconstruction journey. First things first, we're going to start equipping all of our weapons and armor that we have landed with, and next up on the docket, we need to build ourselves some proper shelters. So we started building a small little residential housing section here, almost like a barracks, except it is separate, with us all having our own rooms made of fine wooden walls. That way it'll help us keep from having mental breaks. Fine walls are a bit harder to build, and thus they take more resources and time, so that was basically all we did on our first day. We'll need plenty of rest though, as there's a lot more to do. Ah yes, such humble beginnings, the perfect spot for a capital city of the new empire. We had also landed with our pet yak Dolly, although I'm not too fond of that name, so I decided to give her a new one. She will now be known as Inbred the Yak. I'm sure there's at least one of you out there that gets that callback reference. Anywho though, the very next day we started working on some storage crates on some pallets just outside of our new little homes here. That way we can keep all of our resources and food that we landed with safe and secure and out of the weather. Thankfully, we had started off with quite a bit of survival meals and medicine, so we shouldn't have to worry about that for a little while, allowing us to focus on empire building. Late one evening, we spotted a fallen monolith, an ancient structure of architect design. Thanks to our great colonial education, we're well aware of what these monoliths are capable of and the dark powers that they hold within. We plan on harnessing those powers to our advantage for our new empire. Ginny, with her advanced intellectual prowess, she graduated top of her class, began to investigate this monolith, activating it after prodding with it a bit. In particular, we're quite interested in bioferrite extraction, as this resource might prove crucial to our toppling of the old Shattered Empire, and there's also a few other things on this tech tree that I think we might find useful as well. All good things take time though, so we need to begin researching and investigating the monolith more so, and also prepping for the entities that will no doubt be coming to attack us very shortly. Which is all well and good, but we also still need to focus on the colony itself and turning it into something at least of a proper village, building ourselves a proper power generation method in turning some lights on around here, and also tilling some soil and planting some crops, since we do need to feed ourselves and we also need to make a little bit of money. As you might have guessed, kingdoms and empires require funding. Late one night, some visitors were attacked by a sight stealer out in the dark. We came to reinforce them, but they seemed to handle him pretty well, knocking him to the ground. Thankfully, he's alive. We chained the filthy little bastard up next to our wood-fired generator. Hello there, not so handsome. We are going to study the shit out of you. Indeed, this grotesque little creature would help us out quite a bit with learning new technologies related to the monolith and architect ancient deck. We also had a bunny rabbit go mad. Now, I thought this might be due to the monolith, but I think it's just a crazy bunny, so we killed it pretty quickly, and we ended up turning it into stew. Yummy. Of course, though, we didn't want to just have the Sight Stealer and possibly any other entities and or anomalies that we end up capturing just outside with no real protection or any way to keep them from running away other than a few ropes, so we started mining out a small little space across from where we're going to be building our actual capital city and our residential area, yada yada yada. We would end up having the opportunity to name ourselves as well as our new city. For the faction, we decided to go with the new Imperial Order. Not only intimidating, but also I feel it sends a message to the current empire that is shattered all around the planet. And for the name of the city, we went with Imperial Mountain. Not very creative, but I tried. After we ended up finishing the naming, we also noticed there was a little skirmish between a cultist and a pig pirate bandit whatever, and yeah, so they're both dead. That was pretty cool, and we barely had to do anything. The most cool part about the entire thing is now we have some Molotovs and some grenades, so that should help us out. We had also finished up the new containment area for our little milk machine here. Milk machine. Hey, that's not a bad idea. Technically, he doesn't produce milk, but we are going to be milking him for research in bioferrite pretty soon. We would spend about a day or so working on a brand new communal area for a kitchen as well as a food storage area, but unfortunately, this would be interrupted by our very first raid. A singular tribeswoman by the name of Vulture with no armor. You poor dumb creature. She was, however, wearing a stone mask, so I guess we'll just have to aim for her massive body instead of her tiny little head that is well protected. Oh, look, we ended up taking her down. Lucky for you, ma'am, unlike the current empire of the planet, we believe in re-education and rehabilitation. You would make a fine fighter. Obviously, at the moment, we don't currently have a proper prison setup, so she's going to have to bunk with the Sight Stealer for a moment. Not to worry, though, he doesn't bite. I don't even think he has teeth. Does he? Might be best not to try to pet him. We had also finally got our very first harvest of rice that we had grown. Finally a self-sustaining colony. Soon to be much, much more, of course. And with that, we had finally finished our research into bioferrite extraction as well. As much as we'd like to start harvesting bioferrite, though, we need to start working on some infrastructure if we ever hope to thrive and also to become and reform the empire. And as far as I can think of, there's no empire in the solar system, or perhaps even in this quadrant of the galaxy, that has an entire city made of kiln wood that would just be easily burnt down. No. So we are going to be cutting a lot of stone in hopes of using it as our main resource for buildings now. But as we were working our fingers to the bone, we ended up receiving notification from the Empire. They had one of their knights in the area being chased by a man-hunting squirrel. Such a pathetic coward, and they were seeking refuge here. Oh yes, we'll give you refuge, my little friend. Of course we accept you and we'll keep you safe. In our prison cell, you poor dumb bastard. There's only one empire and you're looking at it. Welcome to the slave quarters, pal. Well, technically a makeshift prison, but we'll enslave you soon. Now, technically, we did hold up our end of the bargain as we stomped the squirrel to death too. I guess that counts. Now look, I'm gonna level with you. Of course, we are the one true empire and we are going to overthrow the current empire, but they do currently have a little bit better equipment, i.e. guns and armor, than we do, so we need some proper defenses. We're going to start working tirelessly on some walls. We would also work tirelessly on getting our very first harvest of our cotton plants, meaning that we have a decent bit of cloth to put in our storage. But since we're prioritizing defenses at the moment, we don't have enough time to take it off for trade. We finally ended up enslaving the Imperial Knight and stripped him of his attire and, of course, his title. I'm not going to even give him the courtesy and the respect of pronouncing his full name, so we'll just call him Azzy. Surprisingly, for a royal, he was actually pretty good with his hands. He had quite the construction skill, and that was perfect for us as we're constructing a gigantic wall, of course. As we were constructing, we also had a small group of shamblers entering the area. Basically, the byproduct of some type of weapon testing from the Architects long ago, and it's a whole big thing. But we do want to try to maybe capture one of them and study it. Shamblers can be incredibly dangerous, but when you have a tight-knit squad like ours with grenades and a few different types of firearms, you can handle them pretty well, and of course so we did. We ended up killing far too many though, and we only had one left to study who we swiftly beat down with our fists. Sorry about that, old girl, but you're in a much safer environment now, and hey, if you're good to us, maybe we'll even feed you some corpses that we have lying around, huh? Would you like that? I'm sure you would. To make things a little bit less informal during our research, we decided to give her a name, the name of La Leche. I know. Giving a name to a sight stealer and to a shambler is kind of like giving a name to maybe a cow when you own a slaughterhouse, right? You know, eventually you're probably going to have to kill it, but it's just so hard not to treat them like pets when you have to, well, pet them and feed them and study them for their cosmic abyss abilities. Sometime later, the Empire would finally show their ugly ass once more, sending 2 soldiers to try to take us on. Though we do outnumber them, make no mistake, these are some extremely experienced, skilled, and dangerous warriors. So it's a good thing that we built walls and embrasures to hide behind so we can fire out and hope to God that we hit them right between the eyes, eh? Well, we also had a bit of an ace up our sleeve. You see, our enslaved Imperial Knight has a psychic ability known as the Vertigo Pulse. Basically, using his mind powers, he can make people super dizzy and make them throw up. This only seemed to work against one of the Imperials, but you know what? Half of them being decommissioned because they keep vomiting all over the battlefield? I'll take it any day. I can't stress enough how much this helped us, because if they were both focused on trying to kill us, I think that they might just have managed it. But thanks to that and our grenades, we finished off the puking blunder, and then shortly after would be his partner. Not before we gave her a sharp 32 shell straight through the old abdomen though. Sheesh, they did end up giving us quite a wallop, but we would end up surviving all the bullets and the cuts and everything like that. And at the end of the day, I gotta tell you, our morale has never been higher. To think that we actually defeated some of their heavily armed soldiers, we might just pull this off. Oh, I also neglected to mention, we have quite a few wild humans wandering around in the area. Not really sure where they came from, but they are helping us dispose of Imperial corpses. I thought that was nice of them. By this point, we had a decent bit of silver. Okay, it wasn't much at all, but it was a teeny tiny little stockpile. And with that money, I think it might be a good idea for us to truly set up our faction and to begin expanding. The official founding of our empire. We are going to be an expansionist society that gives us our first settlement for free. The settlements we found will always be at level 2, meaning we can create more buildings for more money and for more population, as well as a bigger military, and after a year they will be cheaper to found. We're also going to be technocratic, which essentially just boils down to our other settlements being able to help us out with researching technology in a few different ways. Now then, with all the boring jibber-jabber out of the way, as you can see, we have now founded 2 brand new, well, villages. They're not exactly towns or settlements just yet, as it's only about 1 person per, but we will continue growing them. For now, we're going to be hiring some external laborers, and they're going to be getting paid a vast majority of the income that we make from these settlements. And in case you're wondering, how do you even make income from these? Well, it's by setting up different types of camps, like logging camps and also fur hunting camps, and then exporting all the resources we get like logs and leather to the Outlanders for some money. Even after paying our workers' profits, we are going to be making just under 900 silver in taxes about every 5 days or so, which is not too bad of a start. It's like I said, empires need funding, of course, and ours is primarily going to be funded by exports and taxes, just like all good empires. Speaking of which, back at the city, we're building yet another wall on the eastern flank to ensure that we don't get, well, flanked from any enemies. We want to try to ensure that any attack that comes for us is going to be funneled through the southern entrance where we have our defenses. We'll still have to worry about sappers, but we'll get to that when it comes around. As we were constructing, our imprisoned person, known as Vulture, had busted through the wooden doors, and then we popped her in her nose and broke it, and then we took her back to her bed. But this made me think, we need a proper prison, right? We can't have people breaking out and also almost breaking the containment of our anomalies now, can we? Of course not. So that's exactly why we put a lot of time, effort, and resources into building a proper prison above our residential housing in the city. Made exclusively of stone, these will be much harder to break out of. Also, given the fact that these cells are much more pleasing to the eye and much more comfortable with some proper beds, we should end up recruiting fine folks like Vulture all that much faster. For a good few weeks or so, we would mostly just spend our time focusing on researching these anomalies and the monolith, simply of course to get as much knowledge and information about them as humanly possible, just to try to help us out with our little bioferrite experiments we plan on doing. It was also during this time that we finally convinced Vulture here to join us. I knew those hardwood floors and a nice comfortable bed would win you over, sister. Welcome aboard. We ended up giving her our bullpup rifle as, well, to be honest with you, surprisingly, even though she's a tribes person, she was pretty skilled with one. Now that she's part of the team, she could also go ahead and help us out with some day-to-day tasks, freeing up some room for more of our people to go ahead and work on some construction, as you can see right now. These are some of our very first stone structures other than the prison within the city. And quite fittingly, both of them are going to be factories. The one on the left here is actually going to be for our stone cutting to help us further our expansion and creation around the city. And the one on the right here is actually going to be a textiles factory, a place to store all of our cloth and also to produce any type of clothing or things like that if we so feel the need, and we're probably going to need to do that as we continue growing our population. A great example of this is actually Vulture herself, someone who we ended up making a nice shirt, some pants, and even a nice duster all out of cloth, and it's some pretty excellent tailoring work from our knight slave. It's not exactly armor, but it sure as hell beats the shit out of being naked and getting shot at, that's for sure. Quick update on bioferrite shaping, which we recently finished. This is actually going to be very crucial later on, as it's going to allow us to create weapons and whatnot out of bioferrite as well. And it also frees us up to go ahead and start researching a bioferrite harvester. Yes, I know, I researched everything to go about making stuff from it before I figured out how to harvest it. You know, listen, I'm doing it, okay? I just need to prod this shambler in the back with a stick another, I don't know, 50 more times and listen to it squeal, and we should be good to go. Interestingly, we would get yet another attack, but this time around it wasn't a tribal people or even the Empire. It was actually some bandits. It would seem our little city is really on the map now, so much so that they've come to try to rob us and kill us. Well, even as flattered as I am, I'm afraid we can't allow that. Thankfully, in recent days, we had went ahead and added some wooden spike traps to our repertoire, and they ended up hitting a few of them, but they mostly just completely stepped over our barricades. Oh no. They even managed to get behind our walls and began attacking steel. We used Azzy's puke power against them, unfortunately hitting Cook and Steel with it as well, so it was a bit of a cluster, yeah. But eventually, after chucking a few grenades over there, we ended up killing the last of the pirates. Thankfully, with them all dead, we could go ahead and start tending to our wounds. Once again, we got out pretty lucky and nobody ended up dying, although we would end up having quite a few infections that we had to waste our good medicine on. But you know what? I suppose we ended up better off than these sorry-ass pirates, and that's something to celebrate. Something else to celebrate is all the weapons and also a few drugs that they ended up dropping when we murdered them, and those will be great for money. Speaking of which, we had a bulk goods trader from the Outlanders who had come to trade with us. Absolutely perfect, because they could buy all of our cloth, and so they did, and so we ended up making a good bit of money off that as well. Take into account this, along with our taxes that we were getting every 5 days, and we were starting to amass something of a teeny fortune. Now, if you've ever seen or used the Empire mod, but you probably know that in the beginning, the vast majority of your funds from taxes end up getting put back into your empire to settle more settlements and of course to grow bigger, and that's exactly what we're doing here. Now that we've got the Outlanders hooked on our textiles, we thought it might be a good idea to up the scale a bit and begin a gigantic growing zone of cloth in this area next to our little pond here. We're sure to make a lot more money on all this. Now you might be saying to yourself or your screen at me, you know, Rat Knight, I swear to God all you've been doing this entire video is research and selling and collecting taxes. All you're doing is making money and researching stuff. What's the point of all this? Well, it's actually very important, and there's a really good point. We're making a new empire, you silly little goober, and the research is far from finished. You see, we're really doing some double research, double dipping. Not only are we doing anomaly research, but we're also just doing normal research into things like machining so we can eventually make some defenses like automated turrets. And alas, we are also going to be making a lot more money. I know, I'm sorry, but we need to get all of this cloth put on to inbred the yaks back so that we can head out and sell it to the fine Outlanders of the land. Something tells me supplying them with textiles might make them pretty happy about having a new empire, and eventually they might even become our allies. I mean, in the long run, they're going to become our subjects, but for now, we could really use some friends. While we were out traveling and trading, we finally finished the research into bioferrite harvesters, allowing us to suck the milk out of those anomalies. With all the research and more importantly trade completed, we had a good bit of silver left, and yes, as you guessed it, once again we are settling 2 more settlements within our pretty near vicinity, all of which are also getting some areas built for logging and fur camps and mines and things like that, bringing in more and more taxes, up to 4,250 every 5 days once more, so a pretty massive jump, I'd say. With all this money going into our newly founded empire, we can also go ahead and start hiring and equipping some soldiers with a basic synthread t-shirt, as is custom here within the colonies, a nice rifle, and even a bioferrite helmet. Speaking of, let's not forget about those harvesters. We need to suck these little milkers for all they've got, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, I think we're going to use this mostly to equip ourselves with weapons and armor, but eventually we might start selling it as well if we get enough. We also discovered Christie. I don't know who that is or what that means, but apparently it gave us exactly what I was hoping for this whole time, which was knowledge into ghouls. Now, genuinely, I have no idea who Christie is, or if I'm just reading something wrong here, but I'm assuming we've discovered somebody's ghoul. Perhaps one of the Outlanders had one. I don't know. I do know, however, that our next research project is going to be into ghoul infusion, as we hope to use ghouls to help us in our mission of overthrowing the Imperials. With this new technology just on the horizon, we need a proper laboratory to go about testing out this new technology. And on to Jenny's little lab here, where she's been doing her research. We are going to be building something of an operating room, I suppose you could call it. It turned out pretty great. We ended up having 2 operating rooms with 2 tables in each for operations, you guessed it. We also have a table so the doctors and researchers can sit and chit-chat about their findings and whatever else they need to, and we also have a bioferrite shaper, which is going to help us create things out of bioferrite. Now, the lab looks great, but we won't actually be using it for any ghoul infusions anytime soon, as we still have a lot of research to do before those are even a viable option. In the meantime, however, while we're waiting on that, we had our very first snow occurring here since we founded our empire, and also since we've landed on the planet, I believe. It's a good thing we started planting extra food so we could ride out the winters. Something we forgot to account for, though, was heating inside all of our buildings. So we started installing plenty of vents in between all the rooms, and we're also chucking in a few wood stoves in each of the rooms in the housing quarters here to keep everyone nice and toasty 24/7. We also began to experience attacks against our own empire and our settlements for the very first time from the current Shattered Empire. As you can see, they're attacking us with a military force of 4, which which is a bit devastating because our settlements only have a military force of 1. Meaning that until we can spend more money to upgrade our military and our troops, we are going to continue experiencing failures in our defense and our people are going to die. But the only way to increase the military budget is by increasing the amount of villages and settlements that we have, which is exactly what we're going to do. That way we can get more taxes and yada yada. You understand where I'm going with this? Our military might not be all that strong at the moment, but we can at least fight back and continue pushing forward. While we were balancing the defense spending budget, Jenny had finally finished up research into ghoul infusion, which we were tickled plum pink about, but the question remains, who is going to be willing to undergo this operation, and who can we afford to lose? Well, my friends, look no further than the wild humans that have been roaming and terrorizing our territory for the last few months. Now, look, normally we would be pretty opposed to forcing some type of experimental operation on some wild people out in the woods. You know, that's probably a no bueno, but they really haven't been doing anything this entire time except taking up space and stealing our crops, so we are going to be giving them a proper purpose, I think. Hello, our horrific honeys. These two bad mamacitas, these abhorrent abominations against humankind itself, are going to help us win this war. If we can manage to get enough ghouls in our empire fighting for us, it's untelling what we'll be able to accomplish. They're damn near indestructible, and the only thing they care about is eating meat, of course. After we get them some wartime prosthetics, I think we'll be good to go. Our new wartime creations, along with the fact that our empire is getting bigger and bigger every single day, the more money we make, the faster we grow. Yes, I think all these things combined mean it's time for a proper imperial civil war. The empire is back. Whoa, Nelly, made it through the first episode, did you? Well, congratulations. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope you're ready for a lot. And I do mean a lot more, as I have a lot more in store for you. But first, I wanted to mention the fact that if you would like, you could always subscribe to my Patreon. If you subscribe to the Support Rat or Rat Specialist tiers, you could also have your name mentioned in each video credit, as well with the Rat Specialist tier. You could also get early access to the same videos that you enjoy watching here on the channel. And recently, but not always, but also recently, I've begun adding the Rat Specialist and the Support Rat tiers names to their very own Winston Wave series, where all the characters are going to be named after my patrons. So if you're interested in any of that, you should maybe go and check it out. Alright, but enough of the shilling, back to the video. Well, hello there, my royal subjects. Welcome back to the new Imperial Order. As many of you may remember, last episode we founded a new empire that is not so shattered as the previous, and in today's episode we will be completing that empire. First things first, our milking of the anomalies coming from the Archotech Shrine is going quite well, and we are still collecting and setting up quite a stockpile of bioferrite. But the real issue here is the fact that we have so much bioferrite and we've yet to actually harness it for our purpose of creating a new empire and taking down the previous empire. And that's exactly why we are also building ourselves a smithy shop. For it is within this shop, my friends, that we will be making many a weapon as well as armor. Not only out of steel and hopefully some plasteel, but also, most importantly, out of bioferrite. To start us off, we're going to begin by making some simple helmets out of bioferrite to protect our little noggins, and our little brain buckets here should do just the trick. We're also going to be making ourselves some bioferrite gladius, that way we have a secondary weapon in case we get into melee combat that is better than a simple knife. Ah, yes, looking better already, I'd say. Obviously not the best armor, but the best that we currently currently have at our disposal. Ironically, after making helmets and swords out of bioferrite, we ended up having some meteorites landing near our city. Now this was ironic because many of these of course being gold and silver, things that we'll be able to put in a treasury at some point and also use to fund our empire, but some of them were actually plasteel and uranium, which would also be good materials for weapons and armor. But I think we'll save them for some weapons of mass destruction in the future, as well as some machinery. We began with the silver and gold since it would be the most useful to us at the moment, and also because uranium and plasteel take absolutely forever to finish mining. Besides, it's not like it's going anywhere anytime soon. In the meantime though, as everyone's mining, I wanted to do a bit of research into ghoul enhancements. Now what this research will allow us to do is to create many prosthetics that we can actually surgically add on to our ghouls. Basically we just cram them into their rotten skin as far as I'm aware, but things such as plates and barbs and basically just turning them into war machines. There was one tiny issue. We needed advanced subjects to research to be able to unlock this technology, and currently our monolith is still at the basic research tier, so we're going to have to maybe look for some new entities and things like that, but I think I'll be doing that off camera behind the scenes, as the main focus here is building our empire. Last episode I had gotten a quest about a strange signal, and that's most likely going to be some type of flesh mast with a bunch of flesh beasts, so we might send out a caravan at some point to capture one of those beasts, but again, I won't bother you with the details of that unless somebody ends up dying or something. As of right now, we have more important things to worry about, more pressing issues like a power issue that's going on throughout the city, so we built 2 brand new wood-fired generators and a new battery to keep us powered all the time, which happened just in time as we also finished up research into machining, and we're going to need some power to power our machining tables. For the foreseeable future, we are going to be going through the tech tree, going through gunsmithing, blowback operations, essentially just trying to make a straight line for gun turrets. That way we can build them to automatically protect the city's entrance at all times, and we won't have to expend and or risk the lives of our soldiers for every little threat. We would also begin expanding our milking farm here in this little mountain. That way we can capture more and more entities to suck out that sweet succulent bioferrite. But while we were doing this, we ended up receiving communication from a defected royal guard of the Shattered Empire, requesting to come here to join us and our cause and our empire. The only catch, of course, there would be a loyal squad attacking her and thus us as well. Obviously, we ended up accepting, and she would arrive shortly thereafter. Quite frankly, if we're going to make this work, we need to get all the help that we can get, and that means as many soldiers as we can get. And to be honest with you, an experienced royal guard is probably about the best we'll be able to find. Welcome home, ma'am, to the real, true empire. Obviously, it wouldn't be long at all before the loyalty squad arrived as well. Not only were they planning on attacking us, but it would appear that they plan on sieging us, firing their shells over top of our walls and hitting us directly. A damn clever idea, as we have nothing to counter this and we'll have to attack them preemptively before they get set up. It's just a shame for them that we have an army ready at a moment's notice. It's time for us to call in reinforcements. As we already know, our soldiers cannot match the Shattered Empire soldiers in terms of their combat experience nor their equipment, but in this fight we have something that they don't: numbers on our side. And as the shattered soldiers were trying to set up their little siege camp, our soldiers would come in from the southern flank and begin attacking them. All this while we ourselves would begin coming from the north to do the exact same thing. Using our vertigo pulse ability from our slave, we were making them vomit, making it easier for our ghouls to tear them limb for limb. Although, all that being said, we were losing the lives of many of our soldiers coming from our settlements, although their lives were given for the most noble of causes. And as the evening continued waning on and the rain was pouring upon our new helmets, we were finally beginning to push the shattered soldiers out of our territory, and eventually they had begun to flee. Many of them still being affected by the vertigo pulse were kinda stuck here, and our reinforcements were attempting to pick them off one by one. Eventually, though, what was left of them either died or left the area, and this battle had finally been won. And with it coming to an end, we would end up having many different items, weapons, armor, and resources that are now ours. To the victor go the spoils, as they say. What few remaining Imperial troops were here, we would end up stripping them of their weapons and armor, and collecting them for ourselves. Now you may notice, of course, our ghouls had taken quite a licking during this battle, but thankfully we hadn't lost either of them, and thanks to their abnormal regeneration properties, they should be healed up in no time. Maybe just a quick bite to eat to help the process along, huh? Ah, the false Imperials turned into ghoul feces. Kind of poetic, don't you think? Our new Royal Guards woman had actually survived the battle as well, with just a few bruises and scratches, thankfully, so once she's healed up and out of the infirmary, she'll be good to go. Perhaps she even has a few secrets about the Shattered. Yet another of the Imperials, though, we had found out here, who we had stripped of her weapons and armor, we would end up taking prisoner. Since she didn't die, the initial barrage and attack that we sent out against them, she might just be worth keeping. And perhaps she too might have some secrets to help us out in our mission. Speaking of missions, our mining operations here in our big old bioferrite milking farm were coming along quite nicely, though it is still going to take a good bit of time. While we've been busy expanding our city and operations around the city, we've also been collecting a lot of taxes, and I think it's about time that we put these taxes back into the Empire as a whole. Not only are we going to be pumping money into our villages, upgrading them into towns and cities, making them larger with larger populations and more soldiers, but we're also going to be building things to help them with their exports like tree farms, fur hunting camps, and even firearm factories, not only so that we can sell some weapons, but we can also distribute those weapons out to our citizens and soldiers as well. Not only that, but we're also going to be paying more settlers to found more of these towns and cities, growing the Empire furthermore, as you well know. Before too long, we'll even have numbers that rival that of the Shattered. That'll be all in due time, though. With all these new cities, as well as all these new farms and factories and camps, we're making just over 11,000 silver in taxes every 5 days, which is quite a bit. Of course, though, we also plan on doing a little bit of exporting ourselves from the capital here with all the cloth that we've been growing, but not just with some local towns and settlers. We want to be able to sell much of our cloth into the stars as well, and that's exactly why we've decided to build ourselves a comms console. The Shattered have the technology and means of trading with traders in orbit around the planet, and we plan on doing the exact same thing and hopefully taking some of their business. We would end up contacting the Orbital Traders Hub to pay and request for a combat trader in the very near future. Now, of course, this does cost a little bit of money, but we will be making plenty more. Ironically, after paying to have a combat supplier in orbit around the planet, we also have the Outlanders here with a trade caravan, at which point we would end up selling them plenty of our cloth as well, but not to worry, there's a lot to go around for everyone. After we finished up trading, we also detected that there was a major space battle in orbit around the planet. Perhaps one of the traders and somebody else are in something of a conflict, I suppose. Either way, we have a lot of chunks of spacecraft as well as drop pods and many other things falling from the heavens into our area. Not that we really mind, as these are nothing more than free steel and components as long as they don't fall on the city, or us. The crew falling from the stars also didn't belong to any specific faction, so we decided to capture one of them. We were going to capture more, but the others bled to death before we could. Now then, as the city continues growing and expanding, and we also have more machines that suck up more power, we've decided to put all of our research power and priority into geothermal power generation. This should be able to power the entire city without any issues. As we begin researching into this new technology, we're also going to be starting yet another major mining and construction project project in the northmost mountain of the city above the Archotech monument. This, my dear compadres, is going to be our throne room, where our emperor or empress will be making many decisions. You'll notice that there's also two other rooms. One shall be a living space and the other a very special storage area. With construction underway, we would also end up getting the combat supplier trade ship in orbit around the planet, who we would quickly trade with, purchasing many different types of weapons, some of which were actually charge weapons, which should be able to rival and match that of the Shattered. It'll be a while before we can distribute charge technology out to all of our soldiers within the Empire, but for now, those at the capital city will be able to enjoy this high-tech weaponry, and also be able to keep us safe with it, of course. But now that our throne room is complete, it's time for us to elect an emperor and/or empress, as you can see. Jenny, being the most knowledgeable and experienced out of all of us here in the capital, was the obvious choice. She knows a lot about the Shattered Empire across the galaxy. She also knows a lot about Archotech and anomalies and entities, and thus, of course, she should be our leader, and so it is. At some point, we'll need to get her some more formal and royal attire, of course, but at the moment we are at war, and so this will have to suffice for the time being. We have much bigger things to worry about than just looking the part. Speaking of, the Outlanders now seeming to prefer us over the Shattered Empire, which is very good news, have been providing us with plenty of intel, such as an Imperial convoy in the nearby area. This is the perfect target and opportunity, for not only will we be stealing their resources, but we'll also be crippling their supply line in the process. And in doing so, we would also gain some goodwill with deserters who are sympathetic to our cause, and they would also give us an LTech staff along with an armor skin. Glad we accept. As quick as a flash, we would send out a small caravan who would end up rendezvousing with our reinforcements at this convoy. In the meantime, while they're traveling back home, we are expanding the city. This time around, we're actually going to be producing something of a small art workshop. This way, we can go about decorating our city with these beautiful artworks, as well as maybe even selling them for more profit. But before we could finish it, Vulture, along with one of our ghouls, and our reinforcements would arrive at the convoy ready to strike. It would seem that they've taken out the cargo containers while waiting to be rescued by their fellow Shattered members. Oh, you poor dumb animals, you've brought them right to me. Did the work for us, did you? I can't wait to sack that truck and everything that it has. And we just gotta cut through a few of you sorry sons of bitches to do it. Something that I don't expect to be all that difficult, seeing how the party is already here. All of our soldiers coming from nearby settlements have come to help us, and thanks to our overwhelming numbers, the Shattered don't stand a chance. Though they may try, there was nowhere for them to hide from our bullets, nor from our ghoul. And with the death of one last remaining Shattered Imperial, this fight was as good as over. God, it feels good to be a winner, baby. Go ahead, Bayulo, have yourself a little snack. You've earned it. Whoa, not too fast now, you'll get a tummy ache, silly. We approached the convoy and destroyed their pathetic little landmine thing that was supposed to alert them or whatever. We destroyed it and quickly opened up their cargo containers, and we also gathered up some intel from the truck itself. Ended up getting ourselves a sweet siege breaker helmet that is sure to protect our noggins better than our bioferrite helmets, as well as a bomb pack that's essentially an anti-grain warhead, but in a square box, and you carry it around. We quickly loaded all these new items up and began heading back home, but on our way back, the caravan was ambushed by some waster pirates. It would appear that it was one singular waster pirate, none too impressive if you ask me. As she approached us with her hand cannon, we approached her with our fist, beating her brains out onto the stone ground, around, and we actually started tending to her wounds. We'll take you back home as our prisoner, and with that we could actually return home without getting ambushed again. You know, hopefully. We were also finally using our art workshop to produce some proper sculptures, the first of which we would end up putting in our throne room, and then we started working on a small stockpile for sale. Sculptures are often very useful for trading off for weapons and armor from Orbital traders who like some exotic goods and artworks. In other words, our kind of people. Now, some odd hours later, our caravan had finally returned home with all their resources and items in tow, as well as our prisoner, Velez. I'm afraid this poor pirate wasn't able to prove herself useful to us, so we would have to make her useful to us. Looks like we'll be making a soldier out of you yet, pirate. Ah, yet another ghoul in our ranks. We look forward to you killing people for us and possibly dying and then being resurrected to do it all over again. We also went ahead and unloaded all of the things that we had brought with us, including some urns. Not that they're super important, I just thought that they might look nice around the city. We also brought some of the rifles that our reinforcements had dropped when they died. I mean, they are technically ours. We bought them, didn't we? We had also finished our research into geothermal power some time ago, and it is finally time for us to build our very first power generator based on this technology. As you can see, our lights have never been brighter, harnessing the very planet itself to power our capital. That in itself is also poetic, I feel. Next up in terms of research is going to be our multi-analyzer, which is probably going to be one of the longest research projects to date, so we'll check back in on that later. For now, we need to build our storage facility above the throne room. This is actually going to be where we store all of our silver, gold, and jade. Although we don't have much jade at the moment, we mostly just have silver from taxis. I was sick of storing this all outside, as it's not very safe nor secure, obviously. Now, with this facility, our only concern is not going to be is it safe and secure, but it's going to be is there enough room for all of our empire's money. Plenty of room to expand though, if need be, and we would also end up finishing Jenny's bedroom here next to the throne room as well. As she is our empress, we need a proper room for her that isn't just out in the open with everyone else's. Not the most royal nor bougie bedroom that was ever created, but definitely the most royal and bougie within the city. Speaking of, our city is coming along very nicely and is filling out the entirety of the inside of our little valley here that we've settled. I really like it. Hopefully you there, yes, you do too. So much in fact that you'll give me a like, pretty please. Alright, that's enough begging for your love. Right now, we have an Archotech shrine to attune. We finally discovered enough entities that we can attune this, and once we do so, it will now be giving us advanced research points instead of basic. Meaning, of course, we can tackle our project of ghoul enhancements. Sorry it took me so long. I had to capture a flesh beast. You know, nobody died or anything, but somebody might have a metal horror infection. We'll find out. Aside from all of that, though, we are settling new territories around the planet with our empire, with many a town popping up from the north to the west to the south to the east. If there's fresh water, fertile ground, and shattered traitors to murder, you better bet your ass that we're going to be there. For this planet is ours. It belongs to us and us alone. The size of our empire is beginning to truly rival that of the traitorous shattered bastards, and boy do I love it. As large as we are now on the planet, and just being as big and as strong as we are having the numbers that we do, they are definitely going to consider us a very, very serious threat. And all that being said, we need to prep for war, so we're building ourselves some mortars, of course, as well as a machining shop, a place where we can actually produce plenty of shells for said mortars, as well as weapons for our soldiers. One of these such weapons is going to be a piece of apparel, a mini turret backpack. Essentially, every single one of our soldiers is not only going to be capable of fending for themselves during a fight, but they will also have an automated companion on their shoulders at all times who will be able to assist them as well. This isn't just something that we're implementing with our main guard at the capital either. We are going to be distributing this technology throughout every single town and city that is under our control. Now, of course, the smaller cities will still be using our previous loadout for their men and women who are fighting, but going forward, for some of our larger ones who can afford it, they are going to have these backpacks as well as a heavy shield belt and a pet warg to keep them company. As you can see, we mean business. The perfect test for our new soldiers loadout, I think, would be attacking an under farm ran by the Shattered. This type of farm provides all of their nearby settlements with a steady supply of food, so once again, not only will we be able to collect some useful technology and weapons, but we'll be able to begin starving out our enemies. And the deserters are also willing to provide us with yet another reward: a recon eye, L-Tex vest, and a ranged shield belt. Once again, we accept. But before the mission takes place, the recon eye reward reminded me that we had yet to install the armor gland that we have, so we decided to go ahead and perform surgery on Cook, giving it to him. You've probably guessed by now, but once we have the means to do so, Cook here is going to become a very heavy soldier for us. Not because we're going to feed him too much and he's going to be disgustingly obese, but because he's going to have a lot of heavy weapons and armor. You already know, sorry. We also have our next research project, which is going to be a transport pod. Now, this might not seem all that useful, but it is a prerequisite for us to begin research into SRTSs, which are ships that are capable of flight. I also wanted to say, in case you're wondering how we're doing all this research so fast, well, we're actually not. A lot of time is elapsing in between all of these clips. I don't know at this point how long we've been on the planet, but we've been here for quite a while, and I'm just cutting a lot of it out. Anywho, though, some time later, we had already sent out a caravan to attack the under farm controlled by the Shattered, who would end up arriving sometime later. This farm was technically the first time that we had ever attacked one of the outposts controlled by the Shattered, and thus we were a little bit surprised to see how well defended it was. Not only with many a skilled soldier, but also an interesting, unique turret in the middle. Something that we would hope to maybe harness for ourselves, but if we have to destroy it, we will do so. As is expected, I'm sure by this point, we called in our reinforcements, and it was nice to see them scramble in from the woodwork with their pet wargs and new equipment. They immediately began coming from the eastern flank, attacking the enemies as more of them came from the northwest to do the same. This was a perfect maneuver as it allowed us to sneak up from the south ourselves. We would manage to take cover behind some steel walls and fire at the enemies. We actually had them pinned down. And now that we have the upper hand and they are on the back foot, killing them should be a breeze, you would think, but many of their soldiers came out with warhammers and shield belts in an attempt to try to kill us. Thanks to our plasma swords, this would not be the case. We would do our best to stay together in a group and pick them off one by one. Eventually, what remained of their forces here at the farm would attempt to flee the area. We tried to kill as many as possible as they were doing so, and we somewhat succeeded, though some of them got away. As to be expected, but as we approached what remained of the structures in the farm, the turret had been destroyed, unfortunately, meaning we won't be able to use it to our own will, but we will be able to take the resources like advanced components from it. We also had a couple of enemies who had survived, so we decided to tend to their wounds, and we would end up taking them back home with us. As for our ghouls, it would seem that 2 of them have died during the skirmish, though this isn't really a big issue as we can resurrect them once we research the technology, that is. With a few final volleys from our assault rifles, we would destroy the water main here, completely killing any crops that they were growing and any hopes of them eating this winter in the area. With yet another successful mission under our belts, it is time for us to gather up our new things, our enemies that we've captured, as well as the corpses of our ghouls, and head back home, which we would arrive at shortly thereafter. Now, one of these enemies we would actually capture and begin attempting to recruit, as she would prove to be quite useful to us, but the other was only going to be useful for us as a ghoul. She had the perfect build, she was absolutely massive, and now she is undying. Well, sorta. As mentioned, our other two died, but we're gonna bring them back. We stuffed them in the freezer, that way they don't rot. Speaking of ghouls and freezers, though, we have so many ghouls that are joining us here at the Capitol. I think they need a freezer of their own so that we can store corpses for them to feast on, as right now we're forcing them to go out and hunt wild animals, when realistically, if we are fighting the Shattered and say we get, I don't know, 15 or 20 of their dead bodies and stuff in this new freezer, they could eat for months at a time. It's honestly the next step in creating a ghoul army to rule over the planet and to crush our enemies with an iron rotting fist, of course. Think of a ghoul as similar to maybe say a tank, some other weapon of war like that, where it can do all these crazy things and kill all these people, but it still needs fuel at the end of the day. And this tank's fuel just so happens to be corpses of humans. And animals, and animals. We once again had another trade caravan from the Outlanders, as we had many times before, but this one was a combat trader, and we would end up purchasing many mortar shells like shrapnel shells, medicine, and most importantly, 2 sets of power armor. These 2 sets of power armor would be given to Cook and Sidones respectively. Cook, of course, the Phoenix armor, as mentioned, he's going to be our big old heavy soldier, and Sidones because she is one hell of a fighter in terms of shooting and melee, so I think she'll need it. We were also yet again expanding further and further all over the planet with our towns and cities. The main continent here in the north is completely full of our empire, though of course there's still plenty of room to spare, but as you can see, we are very, very large now. Last episode, when I said the empire is back, I meant it. We also recruited the Shattered soldier that we had taken prisoner previously, known as Pro Regal, I believe is how you pronounce her name. I may just call her Pro from here on out, but she seems to be one hell of a capable soldier as well, so we're happy to have her. I had almost forgot as well that we got our recon eye from the deserters as a reward for taking out the farm and making the area safer for us all, so we decided to surgically remove Vulture's right eye and implement the new recon eye, and this shall make her one hell of an eagle eye, no pun intended, but also one hell of a shot, which is more important. Since we had also finished up our research into ghoul enhancements quite some time ago, I had Sidones begin creating some military prosthetics for our little goobers. It's a good thing we've been stockpiling up all that bioferrite. I had planned on selling it, but I think this is a better use. The next step in this process was obviously surgically adding all of these prosthetics onto our new ghoul as a test subject. Luckily, she can't die. Well, she can. We already talked about this, right? And at the end of the day, our little rotting ghoul tanks were actually looking like just that. Some tanks. Some very beefy boys. Capable of ranged attacks now, too. That long tube on their right arm, that is a flamethrower. Our little devilish rotting soldiers here are very, very dangerous now, even more so than we had ever thought possible, especially given the fact that we've also included a metal blood heart as part of their augmentations, making them quite impervious to damage. And all of this made possible by the advanced research that we're getting from the Archotech Shrine and Jenny's genius and knowledge about these technologies. Speaking of which, we would finally finish up research into ghoul resurrection serums as well, meaning we could bring back to life our 2 that had died. Sidones, who at this point is really becoming such a helping hand with all these ghoul serums and body parts, began making up 2 resurrection serums, which we would quickly use on our 2 deceased compadres. Once they're out of their resurrection comas in a few hours and their joints loosen back up a bit and they can move around, we're going to begin equipping them with some prosthetics as well. But with that, my friends, we have done a lot this episode. Our capital city is nearing completion, though there's still a decent bit of work to do. Our ghouls have been equipped with the best damn military prosthetics that we can create, and our empire is massive. Dare I say it, rebuilt even. But with the planetary empire back on its feet and back in action, there's only one thing left for us to do. The traitorous Shattered Empire that has failed this planet and its people around every single corner. They must be dealt with. They must be exterminated. Well, salutations, my impervious Imperial subjects. Welcome back to the new Imperial Order, the one true and pure Empire. Last episode, we'd done a lot of settling, and in this episode, the Civil War begins. Now, wars are won by soldiers, and those soldiers need the proper equipment. Last episode, we started making a straight line for SRTS, skip ships and other types of ships, but in this episode, we're actually beginning with some research into fabrication, as it is a prerequisite for different types of armors, which are going to be important. As this research begins, we're also going to begin contacting the Orbital Traders Hub to request a few trade ships come our way, some exotic goods traders, and some combat supplier ships as well. Now, to go about distributing cataphract and recon armors among all of those soldiers within our empire, we do need to finish that research, but we can go ahead and arm our capital guard and soldiers with some by purchasing it. While we're waiting on them to get back to us on that, as well as the research that we were talking about, we're going to start on another little construction project here that's going to help us out in the war, but that would be rudely interrupted by a feral ghoul. This vicious, pale little goblin was coming right for us, and as it was trying to attack us, I noticed that it was actually firing at us like a firearm. It appears that this little creature somehow managed to get a bioferrite rifle arm, so that tells me that someone else seems to be experimenting with ghouls on the planet. Naturally, the only solution that we had was to put the poor little bastard out of its misery, so we went ahead and did so. But the question still remains, where did it come from? This attack doesn't seem deliberate, so that probably means it wasn't the current Shattered Empire that we're about to take down. Highly unusual. For now, we're gonna stuff the poor little creature in our freezer, and we'll end up resurrecting it at a later time. Maybe it'll prove useful to us. As for now, we need to get back to our construction of our biofuel refinery. That's right, baby, we're going to start making our own chem fuel, something that's needed to be done for quite some time now, especially given the fact that our capital city here lies right in the midst of a gigantic temperate forest. It only makes sense that a lot of the wood that we cut down we would end up turning into chem fuel. In case you're curious as to what we're going to be using all this chem fuel for, weapons of war. Why, of course, we're going to be making some mortar shells, and once we get them researched and what have you, we'll start making some more shrapnel and cluster shells as well. Sticking with the theme of war and our defenses as well as our offenses, we're going to be making ourselves a small little pillbox in the side of the hill here, just around the city entrance in the south. We're going to be filling it up with 4 mini turrets as well as some slate embrasures, allowing them to shoot towards the east and towards the south. Since this is where all the attacks come from, it only makes sense that we would put our automated defenses down here, something that has been long overdue. But running an empire isn't just all about war and defenses. There's also other things you have to handle, like some strange noises coming from caves, and occasionally you have to send in the military there as well. Actually, you know what? It's pretty similar to going to war, I guess. Just with a bit more bureaucracy, I suppose. Speaking of, Jenny is going to hop on the old comm there and do a little bit of trading with a combat supplier, where we would end up purchasing a recon helmet, armor, as well as some other weapons and things like that. Most importantly though, we ended up getting some cluster shells. Instead of making these, we've decided to purchase them since we have so much money from taxes anyway. As you can see, just lying all over the ground. And of course, we immediately began equipping some of our capital soldiers here with the new equipment that we had purchased, and boy oh boy do they look dapper. Very royal, I guess. Something else that has been long overdue is a brand new, more royal dining room. room. That way, we have a nice fancy place for our empress to eat with all of our fine folks. For God's sake, people, we are no longer living in the slums of this world. We are the Empire and the new Imperial... You know what? As you can see, I just made a very nice dining room. I'm not going to give you the whole speech and spiel, but as you can see, it is indeed much nicer, and everyone is much happier with this than they were with the previous one. Speaking of which, the old dining room and food storage area is now just solely going to be a food storage area somewhere ice cold. That way we can keep all of our meats and vegetables frozen, and it's also not too far away from the new dining room, which is very important when trying to keep in mind efficiency. Yes, indeed, the capital continues to keep expanding and improving and moving right along, but as does our empire. Speaking of, we are also going to be making some improvements to it. First and foremost, we are going to be ramping up our production of firearms as well as other different types of weapons at firearm factories and smithies, of course, and our production of ammunition. We are going to be opening up several different types of mines to get the resources that we need to make bullets, because bullets go in guns and then guns fire the bullet. You know how it works, okay? As we were looking into improving our empire, it is quite vast. However, I do notice a severe lack of settlements in the southern hemisphere of the planet, which is a big problem because the current shattered empire has a well population down there, essentially giving them an iron grip on the entire southern hemisphere. Well, no more of that. We are going to be investing all of our taxes for 2 tax cycles, which is almost 2 months worth, into settling down in the southern continent here. Now, this is pretty great, but we can't have a bunch of fresh and new settlements on the southern continent down here getting taken over by the shattered if they decide to attack in the middle of the night, so we're also going to be building some training facilities. That way they're no longer wet behind the ears and they'll know how to defend themselves. Now, since we basically spent all of our taxes on settling the southern continent, the one in the southeast is going to be unoccupied for the time being, but after a few months pass, we'll be able to settle there as well. It's just going to take some time. In the meantime, back home, we had finished our research into fabrication. Now, I'm going to jump back over. We're going to be jarred a little bit here, but we're going to start researching the skip ship this time around, and after that's complete, we'll start looking into researching some recon armor and stuff like that. We want to try to balance it as much as we can in preparation for our brand new aerial vehicles. Once we finally get them researched, that is, we're actually going to be building ourselves some landing pads here. Now, these skip ships are basically VTOLs, meaning they don't need an actual strip to launch off of, and they can actually just launch off a pad, which is perfect for a more compact capital, giving us more room for other structures. Once that was finally completed, I just kind of let the empire run. I let everyone go about their trading and their production and everything like that, basically just trying to collect some more taxes. You see, for us to get to our goal of this civil war, where we start bringing down the shattered settlements and towns and cities, we really need to conquer this southeastern continent and just basically settle there before we can actually attack. Otherwise, they're going to dig in deep and we'll never get them out. Now, lucky for us, with the massive size that our empire is, we are getting about 26,500 silver per tax cycle, which is every 5 days, which is absolutely incredible. I'm also just now realizing, I think earlier I said something about spending enough money for 2 tax cycles, which was true, but I also said something about it being almost 2 months. I got the time mixed up. Anyways, it's a lot of money though. After about a month and a half had passed, we had just enough money to go ahead and start settling in the southeastern part of the main continent. I'm not all that great with geography. Technically, I think this entire thing maybe could be just one big continent, kind of like a Pangea, but whatever. We are the Empire. It is what we say it is. As we were attempting to build cities and towns and villages that could rival that of the Shattered in their own territory, we noticed an unoccupied island in the southwestern sea. Jan Island, as it was known, basically completely barren except for some temperate forest hills in the east. but this might be the perfect place for us to settle a few encampments. What kind of encampments, you might ask? Well, the kind that consist of slave labor and forced labor, of course. Some forced labor camps and mines and farms and just all kinds of great stuff. Don't take that out of context. This is only going to be for the worst of the worst, like the shattered enemies that we have, and maybe some tribal impids, Neanderthals, waster pirates. Moving on. Back at the capital, we were about to have the fight of our lives. An absolutely gigantic raid, a powerhouse raid, I should say, coming right for us from the Shattered. It does appear that they plan on sieging us, but they have many a recon and cataphract in their ranks. This will not be easy, friends. First things first, we're going to enact a little bit of counter-mortar fire with some of the shrapnel shells that we had purchased. I believe I said shrapnel, but I meant cluster. But that's the good thing about cluster shells. Once they hit the ground, they explode a little bit more, making it easier to hit your targets. After bombing these bastards into oblivion, we immediately called in our reinforcements right on top of them. Not only would they be able to kill quite a few of the shattered soldiers, but they would also be able to separate them from the main group that was coming to attack our city. Obviously, this will separate them into two groups, making this fight much easier for us, but that doesn't mean that the fight itself is going to be easy. Many of them damn near came right through our gates, but thanks to our squad of ghouls, this was impossible for them to do. Our inhuman companions began ripping them to shreds right before our eyes. They had us completely surrounded, though, and with this amount of enemies, our embrasures became less of an advantage to us and more of a liability. Because of this, we decided to pull the main city forces back and let more reinforcements handle this. Again, dropping right in on top of the heads of the shattered soldiers. God, it feels good to give them a taste of their own medicine for a change. With their members beginning to fall to their knees in pools of their own blood, and our reinforcements and ourselves outmatching them, the Shattered had no other choice but to flee like the cowards that we knew they were. Run away, you usurping imposters. Run away and hide, for we will find you in the very near future. Just like that, yet again, we were victorious, and the new Imperial Order was the victor once more again today, as they always shall be. But even with the battle over, the consequences still linger on. We ended up losing 3 of our 4 ghouls during this battle, though this wasn't exactly our biggest problem, as they could be revived. But Viet could not. Based on what I saw, it appeared that Viet attempted to sacrifice himself, jumping in front of a shattered rifle for the Empress herself. A damn good man, a damn good soldier. Gone far too soon. Speaking of our cruel enemies, we would end up taking 2 of them prisoner, and we would immediately begin the rehabilitation process. If they don't want to succumb to the truth and join us, though, they're always welcome as part of our ghoul squad. Even with the losses that we have endured here today, we did still end up getting quite a few resources from their siege camp, like reinforced barrels and components, as well as a smorgasbord of different types of weapons. Today, we have felt our true first loss, our true first casualty. Though we ended up winning the battle, our hearts still grieve for our fallen ally. We will make the Shattered pay for this, and we shall make them rue the day that they decided to try to usurp our kingdom, our empire. It was during this time we were getting quite a few traders from the Outlands, and we would end up selling them many of our goods, like our artworks that we've been producing, as well as many different types of textiles, like plain leathers and blue fur and cloth, of course. You know how it is when we made some money. We also decided that it was about high time we started working on a tomb, a mausoleum, if you will, for our fallen. VN may have been the first, but surely he will not be the last. There are two things in this universe that will always be true. The new Imperial Order is the proper empire and true empire, and people die all the time. Everyone's time is limited on this planet, so of course we have to have a place to store our dead, for them to rest, if you will. VN had given his life for the Empress. The least that she could do was see to it that she was the one that brought him to his final resting place. As a sign of respect. We would also end up holding a funeral, of course, for all to pay their respects to VN, as well as to grieve together. We then held a dinner in his honor after that to talk about how he was worth 1,000,000 shattered soldiers. With our fallen laid to rest finally, we would then do some trading with an orbital combat supplier, purchasing a few bits and bobs of armor and some weapons such as a charge launcher. Think charge weaponry, but an RPG. We had also finally whipped up enough resurrection serums that we could bring our little ghoul squad back to life, including but not limited to the one that I forgot about that hates us and apparently still hates us. Since there appears to be no way to rehabilitate a ghoul, even if trying to force it into fighting for us, I suppose there's literally no way, we decided to chain it up and milk it for all it's worth. That sweet, sweet succulent bioferrite, baby. I wanted to mention a couple of things as well. First and foremost, I've also been purchasing some dyes from the Outlanders because we've started dyeing our armor a nice shade of gray. Not only to differentiate ourselves away from the Shattered and their similar armor, but also to have a nice outfit to wear for their funeral. Yes, that's it. The second thing I wanted to mention, the night that we had taken prisoner our slave, I think in episode 1 or 2 or whatever, he has begun somewhat worshipping the monument, so much that he meditates and prays nearby it, as about a foot or so of snow pours down from the sky, and he doesn't seem to mind. A little bit weird. Moving right along though, we still have a civil war to start, do we not? So we are finally beginning to work on our skip ships. That's right, baby, we finally finished up the research, and it only took us a long time, a really long time actually, but we're not done waiting yet because these ships require a lot of resources and thus take a very long time to construct, so we'll check back later. In the meantime, the very next night we ended up having a small group of people, including one child who requested a very small sum of silver to buy back one of their friends from some kidnappers. Now normally the Empire would not negotiate with terrorists, pirates, or wasters, especially not wasters actually, but since we don't know who took this friend, we are just going to go ahead and give them some money. We are a generous empire. How can we be so kind and uncruel? I know. Oh look, our ships are finally done. That way we can bomb that shattered city. It's about damn time we finally started a worldwide civil war. We've been talking about it for long enough, haven't we? We are going to bomb the Shattered quite literally into the Stone Age, damn near into extinction, if we can manage it, that is. Let's get this party started. Up and away we go. You see, there's a pretty major shattered city just a little bit to the west of our capital city. It is quite literally one of the largest, if not the largest cities on the entire planet. The perfect target for our attack. Our initial bombing had killed, maimed, and or injured several shattered soldiers and civilians, unfortunately. But if you want to make an omelet, you know the saying. Anyhow, though, with a good portion of the city burning to the ground, this felt like the perfect time to send in our ground forces. Well, I think that takes care of that. Oh, well, actually, now I think that takes care of that. That's how you start a civil war, baby. You don't f with the real empire. Our armies began marching all across the lands, taking any and all imperial towns and cities that they could. To our surprise, they actually weren't having all that great of luck for this to be a sneak attack. As sneaky as we could be after blowing up one of their cities, the issue is the vast majority of their towns and cities that we're attacking were not actually managing to capture. Now, sure, we are killing plenty of the shattered soldiers when we're attacking, reducing their numbers, but their technology, their equipment, their weapons, their armor is just so much better than ours still, and I think that that is the real underlying issue here. To help us remedy this little issue, we would immediately begin research into recon armor. I do think that this is going to help us out quite a bit, although there are still many other things we need to do. One of which is upgrading all of our towns and cities. You see, when they're small, like they currently are, with them being mostly level 2 and some even being level 1 towns and cities, they can't exactly raise armies to the size that we require to fight the Shatter. And that's exactly why we're going to begin upgrading them. Not only would we upgrade though, we would also end up making a new unit. Now, we don't currently have recon armor unlocked, and most of the tech we have is flak armor and things like that, but somehow, way, shape, or form throughout our research, it seems that we do have access to deserter tech as well as absolver armor, which is indeed slightly better than flak armor and simple helmets, of course. So we immediately started implementing these new units into our squads, and I thought that this would help out a lot. But as you can see here, we attacked multiple of the shattered settlements and only managed to capture one of them. It was worth a shot, and capturing one of them is better than capturing none of them, I suppose, but just barely, unfortunately. But we will not be stopped so easily. This is simply the beginning of this wide-scale, global, essentially, war, since we are the two massive powerhouses on the planet, and we will come out victorious, by God. Now, as we continue our extensive research into this type of armor that is required for us to win this damn war, I do want to show you a few things that are possible with armies of the size that we currently have. Not only can we try to capture enemy settlements and towns and yada yada yada, but we can also simply just raid them, attack them, and attempt to steal things from them. As you can see here, in a successful attempt, we ended up getting a Psy Trainer, a Field Hand, and a Hellcat rifle. Now, it's not exactly great, but it is something. However, not only are we getting different types of loot-like items and weapons and resources from these battles, but we're also filling out those labor camps on our little island here. And we treat them with much more respect and dignity than they ever would have treated us with. We give them food, we give them jobs, we give them a purpose. And when they get out of line... Oh, you were probably hoping for a happy ending for them. Well, this isn't fiction, okay? And the perfect world doesn't exist. I gotta tell you, one of the greatest things about having a global empire is definitely all the taxes. We didn't really build our treasury, or whatever we're calling it, to sustain this much cash. I think we're going to need to expand it. We also ended up getting a distress signal from the Outlanders, basically saying one of their cities was under attack at the moment, and they're requesting us to come and reinforce them. Now, this is a big deal because this will make the Outlanders our ally, but also they have quite a few rewards for us, one of which being Resurrector Mech Serum that we could theoretically end up giving to Viet. Very well, Outlanders, you drive a hard bargain. Not really, but we're on our way. Instead of sending troops on foot, which would take several days, if not over a month, I've decided to send them some air support. However, as our aircraft were flying to the city, the pirates ended up arriving well before we could. Now, this put us in a bit of a pickle because they started immediately killing Outlanders in the city, and we had no way to get there any faster. But luckily, we did have a few towns in the area who could drop pod in some troops. Oh, it's times like these that it pays to be a global powerhouse empire with a gigantic military with many an expendable troop. Our brave men and women would commence an absolute slaughter fest against these pirates, and eventually they were killed. Or at least the first group of them was. A second group would follow shortly thereafter, arriving in their own drop pods. A bit of a sneak attack against the city, but thankfully our air support had finally arrived. And that takes care of that. Actually, there were like 3 other groups, but they were a little bit smaller, and after dropping a few cluster bombs on them as well, we defeated them completely. And we ended up getting paid handsomely for our efforts, I must say, as we ended up getting plasteel, the armor skin gland, and the resurrector mech serum, as we were foretold, of course. But even better, just as we had hoped, we were now allies with the Outlanders, as this gave us a plus 100 relationship boost. You're welcome. Once our fine pilots had finally returned home and everyone was safe and sound, it was time for us to bring Viet back to life. Welcome back to the land of the living, my friend. We are ever so glad to see you. You're definitely going to need some time to recover from the resurrection sickness, as you've been dead for well, a long time. Your skin was completely rotted. I actually don't know how it came back. It looks like a few things did not come back though, like your ability to see through both of your eyeballs, and you also have dementia now. Sorry about that, but hey, at least you're alive. Right? Well, while Viet ponders his existence and meaning and probably wishes he was dead again, I wanted to let you know that we have expanded our treasury and or silver storage for the capital. We might have to keep doing this as we keep getting larger, not that that's really a problem. We also had our gore hole getting out of its containment cell, and I really only bring this up because this keeps on happening, damn it, with many of our entities, and it's getting to be very hard to not kill them since they're pretty tough. I think we need to try to build some defenses in their cells to keep this from happening more often, and or try to maybe help us put them down when they get out of hand, you know? As we were prepping to do so, we then noticed that we had a group of the false Imperials and some pig pirates that were gathering in the area, and it looks like they plan on trying to kill each other. Well, they picked the wrong spot outside of our capital's walls because we plan on killing both of them. Since most of our forces are out fighting the Imperials already, we are going to begin some airstrikes ourselves, and after that, it didn't really go to plan. We also started with some mortar strikes, which kinda sorta went to plan. At the very least, we ended up mangling a few limbs here and there. Given enough time, the two groups decided to try to attack each other, during which time we were still firing many a cluster shell at both groups. It seemed like the perfect opportunity since they're all in this little area. Eventually though, funny enough, the pig pirates killed enough of the Imperials that those poor bastards decided to try to flee. But their victory would be short-lived, as just like any game of couch co-op between you and your two siblings growing up, winner takes the champ, baby. And unfortunately for these pig bastards, the champ was us and our little fetid ghouls. Using their bioferrite flamethrower arms, I could smell the seared pork like bacon in the air through the rainy night. Delicious. Ripping and shredding and tearing them limb for limb. Could you imagine the fear of seeing these ferocious creatures coming for you after a fight with the false Imperials? Poor dumb saps. By the end of the night, one of the pig pirates managed to get away, but the others were all dead. Although the Imperials hadn't all died, and we even ended up taking 3 of them as prisoners. Now, 2 of them weren't exactly what we were looking for, to say the least, so we ended up taking them to the operation room, otherwise known as Jenny's House of Horrors, where they will now serve us as a gray lump of flesh that is unfeeling in our army. Ghouls. We turned them into into ghouls, okay? Now that that little quarrel between the two parties was finally over and we came out victorious, as you could imagine, we started working on those turrets in each of our little milking rooms here to make sure that our entities are always in line, and if they're not, we'll put a bullet between their eyes. Our Imperial slave Azzy was also having some horrible visions and going on rambling about insane things. That's what you get for worshipping that damn monolith, you idiot. We also have a lot of money, basically. Our treasury here is once again completely full, and I know a lot of you probably get a little bit bored with the empire building, and if that's the case, I'm not quite sure why you're watching this video or this little mini-series, because that's exactly what we're going to be doing. As you can see, we have a lot of settlements within our near vicinity, right? Well, we are going to be upgrading them immensely with artillery outposts, since they're so close by. Giving them artillery outposts will mean that we can request fire support from these areas, having them fire shells into the capital city, but not within the city itself, you know what I mean, within the territory, to kill our enemies. We can also request this support anywhere else within their vicinity, and I think it'll help us a lot with taking out the Shattered. In particular, we plan on using anti-grain warheads, so I think it'll help. Since we're conquering a lot of Shattered territory, though, we need to keep the civilians that were once governed by them and used to that government happy under our government. But if they don't get happy, we go in and we crush them, right? So we need to also start building some automated defense forces to help us out with that. It also helps our military size, and just like with the artillery, it's going to help us take over Shattered territory, so doing this in the cities around the capital means that it was much easier for us to defeat the Shattered settlements around the capital as well, claiming them for ourselves. Now, of course, we can't do this with every single city. We don't have that much money, and we would end up going bankrupt trying to build internal defense forces and artillery in every city, at least so quickly. I had hoped that we would be able to end this civil war, begin it, and end it in this episode, thus ending this series once and for all, and finally claiming victory on the planet, but I guess we underestimated the Shattered. Something to look forward to, though. Back at the capital, we had a lone figure approaching the colony by the name of Abram. We decided to speak with him. He was murmuring about some type of scientific breakthrough and how he's a genius and just bragging about himself, but he did offer to join us here, and he would help us with our research and our mission, claiming to be a true pure-blooded Imperial like ourselves. So we accepted. Welcome aboard, little fella. You can go and research our milk machines a little bit if you like. We don't mind. He'll also be great for helping us out with other research projects, such as the recon armor, which we recently finished, but things beyond that, of course. Again, my friends, the capital city is coming along very, very nicely, though we didn't really add much to it today, as this episode was mostly focused on the Civil War and fighting off the Shattered and claiming their territory. I think next episode we'll most likely end up finishing up the city as well as the Empire, of course. At this point, we actually, I believe, have more towns, villages, settlements, and cities than the Shattered themselves, so they should now be on the back foot. I'm thinking next episode we start setting our sights maybe on some larger aerial vehicles, maybe some more explosive types of bombs, i.e. nukes, or we might even just create a great grand ghoul army and take over every single settlement that way. We'll see where it goes. Real quick though, I wanted to mention that Viet is actually back in action. Kinda. He still can't see, but we are letting him sweep up the throne room floor, so that's nice. We're good people, aren't we? I know. Alright, see you later. Hello, my rambunctious royal subjects, and welcome back to the one and true Empire, the new Imperial Order, of course. Last episode, my friends, we started an Imperial Civil War, and today we end it once and for all. But first and foremost, before we can worry about finishing this war that we're in the midst of, we need to worry about starvation. As you well know, we have a few fields that we grow crops in, but this main one here is very small, and it is where the majority of our food comes from, along with, of course, hunting some wildlife in the region. But if we run out of wildlife, we're basically dead. And thus, we need a little bit of a solution to this conundrum. And that is exactly why, my good friends, we are expanding the capital city. Something that, you know what, I'm not really sure if I planned on doing in the future, but this land here to the east was always here for our taking any time that we wanted it and or needed it, and I do indeed think that we are going to be using it for some new farmland. We have a little pond up this way where the water from the mountains rolls into this little crevice in the ravine, and you know, it's perfect for growing crops, so that's exactly what we plan on doing around it. Very fertile. Since this new farmland is quite far away from our kitchen and food storage area, we are also going to be building some food reservoirs out here, something of a low priority food storage area, as one might imagine, and going along with that, we are also going to be setting all these new storage pallets and what have you up to low. That way everyone will bring the food inside, and if there's not enough room, it can stay here. This way it won't perish nor be left out on the ground to deteriorate. It was also during this time we had an exotic goods trader in orbit around the planet, and of course we decided to do a bit of trading with him, purchasing ourselves many a new resource as well as weapons such as doomsday rocket launchers. If any poor dumb fool decides to tread a little bit too near the capital walls, these should help them find their footing, if you catch my drift. We would also purchase a few luxurious recreational items like a flat screen television as well as a telescope for all to enjoy, and even a nice bionic body part, a recon eye, if you will. This one in particular will be going to Viet, who had recently lost his eyesight after dying, and then we resurrected him with some serum, and yeah, he's blind, but not anymore, as you can see. At least not in his right eye, that is. We only had the one recon eye to purchase, unfortunately. Maybe we'll get him another one, though. The idea to cure his blindness is also a great idea from our friend Linda Schmidt 1993, so thank you very much, and Viet thanks you as well. Funny enough though, as we were performing this surgery, we received notification that the current false Imperials, the Fallen, are requesting a diplomatic meeting of peace with us. I think we're going to attend. I mean, peace is so much better than war, and maybe they'd be willing to hand over the crown to us. That's it, we're doing it. We quickly threw together a diplomatic party, and they launched, and they quickly went to speak with the Shattered about brokering a peace. Huh. That's odd. I suppose the negotiations didn't, exactly go as planned. Well, I'm sure they did their best to try to talk things out. I'm just kidding. The only piece those dirty, shattered bastards are gonna get is a piece of lead in their gullet, okay? Now then, moving on, how about a little bit of research? We are actually going to start researching Devil Strand, and this is going to be a crop that completely replaces all the cloth that we've been growing and selling. Not only is it much more comfortable and durable, but it is also worth much more, obviously, so we are going to start growing that in our cotton field as soon as we get to research, which ended up not taking us very long at all. Not surprisingly, we have some of the best minds on the entire planet in our city. We would waste absolutely no time getting some of our best growers in the city growing this field full of our new devilish red little mushroom plant thing for money, and also for all of our people. Now then, as for our next research project, since we've recently finished up recon armor, we are now going to be working on marine armor, the next step up, if you will. We must never cease to continue pushing our advancements further as a civilization and as a global leader and or global empire, of course. Besides, more advanced armor is going to be better for the Civil War, and as are many different types of structures in all of our towns and cities, such as barracks. These will help us increase the efficiency of our military, and thus we are going to be building them all across the world in every town and city and blah 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 blah. I know it's probably boring, but something that might interest you is is our brand new soldier class that we're going to be making with recon armor, a recon helmet, as well as a cyclone minigun, a new heavy class. One of these bad boys alone could level a small Neanderthal village, and we are going to be putting several in squads, along with a loyal warg and many other soldiers such as those wearing the Absolver and Deserter armor sets. But don't look now, friends, for a gigantic group of the Shattered are at our door, heavily armed and ready to kill us. You know, this might be the perfect test for our new soldier class. Let's send in some reinforcements, shall we? This entire fight was nothing but complete and utter chaos. Truly a beautiful sight to behold, though, from an outside perspective, that is, as our troops were annihilating them. At least at first, they were heavily outnumbered, and unfortunately, after a while, it seemed that even our new soldiers began to fall against the Shattered simply because of their sheer numbers. But that's okay, we have another trick up our sleeves. A relatively expensive trick given the price of anti-grain warheads, but well worth it. Here goes nothing. All that, and only one Shattered cataphract managed to survive by avoiding the blast. Not too shabby, I'd say. Again, those anti-grain warheads are extremely expensive, but I would say quite effective, wouldn't you? And we also had a little bit of friendly fire there, but those soldiers were probably going to bleed to death before we got to them anyways, okay? You'll have to trust me on that one. But I think our new soldier class will be very effective in this war. Let's maybe have a look. Ah, yes indeed. After adding this new armor to our ranks of soldiers, it would seem that we are having a much easier time at conquering many of these towns and cities. Perfect, that's exactly what we wanted. That's actually quite literally the whole point. I've also began designating some of our weaker militaries with not as sophisticated gear to stop trying to capture these towns and cities and just begin raiding them, as we very briefly touched on last episode. This way, instead of many of our men dying to try to capture the entire city, only a few casualties will happen and we end up getting a lot of Imperial loot. Some of the most useful loot that we're getting are prisoners. Not only are we getting to take resources and items from the Shattered, but we're actually imprisoning and enslaving quite a few of them as well. And we're also able to bring these slaves to the capital city to force them to work for us. For example, in our new farming district on the eastern side of the city that we just recently built. Oh, it is perfect. Although I guess they need somewhere to sleep, huh? Not to worry, false Imperials. The capital isn't like our labor island camps. We are actually going to take pretty good care of you. We're actually going to build you your own little residential district here, where you'll have some proper beds to sleep in, and we promise not to execute, too many of you, just the ones that really deserve it, okay? The most useful thing about having this residential district for our Shattered slaves near the farm is that they can just wake up, go to the farm, collect all of our crops and tend to them and all that, and even eat a few handfuls when they get hungry for dinner, go to bed, get up and, well, do it all again. It's the perfect plan. We also would end up building in the northmost part of this new section of the city a small little slate cottage for Azzy himself, our very first Shattered slave. He has really proven himself to be quite useful, and thus I feel he should be rewarded as much as we can reward him, that is. You could think of him as being the head of the Imperial enslaved peoples. He's going to be hated by us and hated by all his peers. Sounds like a pretty sweet gig, huh? I mean, look at that sweet Devil Strand top hat. Things couldn't get much better than that, We would end up having a caravan from our Outlander allies who were actually looking to sell us plenty of medicine as well as mortar shells, helping us fuel our war. Thanks, Outlanders. They also had some useful salvaged armor, such as a cataphract helmet, which would be perfect. A couple days later, we would end up trading once again with yet another exotic goods trader in orbit who had a few yaks that we could purchase, as well as gold and even a mega screen television. Wow. Our pet yak that we have landed with by the name of Inbred was happy to finally have some friends that were of the same species, and of course we named them appropriately, as you can see. As for one of our televisions, we would put it in the Empress's room so she could enjoy her programs every night, such as the local planetary news, to get more updates about how everyone is perceiving this civil war, if you will. Now then, as for the gold that we had purchased earlier, along with the large stash and reservoir of gold that we had in the treasury, we would end up using it to make some more royal furniture. Some furniture that is much more befitting a proper empire than what we were currently using, of course. For now, we've started with the Empress's bedroom, the throne room, which there wasn't really anything in there to replace that wasn't already royal, as well as the dining room, and as you can see, I'm pretty pleased with the results. The rest of the town, though, it's gonna have to wait. However, those of you with a keen eye have probably noticed that the capital's treasury is looking a little bare bones at the moment. I had recently expanded it even further so, and I also emptied it with all of our new troops and upgrades and so on and so forth. Wars are expensive, and as you can see with us finishing up our research into marine armor, this war isn't going to get any cheaper anytime soon, as we need to give this out to many of our new troops as well as veteran troops. With this new armor and technology, we are going to be forming an even heavier class of soldiers. This one wearing prestige marine armor and carrying their very own autocannon, much more powerful than the Cyclone minigun, but it requires a specific type of power armor to operate, i.e. marine power armor, thus making it even more expensive, of course. But if you think one of these soldiers' loadouts is expensive, try 6 of them, which is what we're going to be putting in one squad. I know, pretty crazy, huh? Not to worry though, as we won't be bankrupting the Empire, at least not anytime soon, as we just recently got a fresh load of taxes in. This should pay for it, for now. However, we have done so much for our Empire, I think it's time that we do something for our capital, in terms of defenses once more, that is. We're not going to be arming our guard with any marine armor autocannons in their hands, at least not for now, but we are going to be putting some brand new autocannons on the outside of the city's entrance. This will mean that the capital has the absolute top of the line defenses that money can buy and that humans can create. Not only are we building 2 double autocannons on each side of the entrance, but also a gigantic autocannon in the middle. I think we're going to be pretty well protected. But as the Empress is handling the more bureaucratic side of this war, like maybe looking into taking out a few loans from the Outlanders, perhaps we should check in on the progress of our conquest thus far. And indeed, all the new tech, armor, and weapons that we've been giving out and assigning to our soldiers seems to really be doing the trick. Pretty good, I would say, and we're also even taking more and more of the shattered soldiers, and a few civilians, as our prisoners. So many, in fact, that I think I have a special project in mind for them. I call this one the Mass Ghoul Infusion Program. We are going to be turning all these useless hunks of meat into some pretty useful hunks of pale meat as ghouls, one might imagine, as you can see. Our ghoul army has never looked better, or as plentiful, I might add. My little pretties, you are going to go on to do great things, like mass murder. As the war continues, we are also still working on our city, of course, and something that we've needed for a very long time is a proper pin for all our yaks, but since we only had inbred all this time, I never really cared, and we just kind of moved him all around the city and let him graze, but now we have a proper place to keep all of our inbred yak babies so they can breed and eat, and we can milk them, and yeah, I then noticed that Foos managed to woo Viet by telling him a tale about adulthood. I assume it's some type of boomer meme or millennial meme about adulting. Something like that, I don't know. But apparently the two of them are in love now. It's good to see our fine soldiers finding love, especially in one another, and in particular our half-blind comrade, keeping each other warm by their little wood heater all night long. How sweet. Something even more sweet is going to be us owning the skies once we finish our brand new research into the Albatross ship, a much more effective, efficient, and intimidating SRTS. In the meantime, we're also going to finally be upgrading all the furniture and what have you of all of our royal soldier and guardsmen throughout the city. All of their shabby, shitty wooden furniture is now going to be gold-encrusted royal wooden furniture. They still have some wooden flooring because the beauty stat is 2, which is the same as any type of fancy stone flooring I could have made, and you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Besides, it reminds us of our humble beginnings, and perhaps maybe we only reserve the fine stone flooring for our throne room, and of course for our empress, who appears to be quite lonely. Perhaps she needs a lover to warm her bed as well. Oh, you poor wrinkly-ass cougar. You basically own the entire world, and yet you don't have a man or woman to keep you company. Ah, you are sad, but maybe soon. Until then, we're going to be focusing on other things other than the Empress's love life, that is, I mean to say. In the southern part of the capital here, we are going to be building a few new things, one of which is going to be a new residential district, of course, for any more folks who end up joining us, slaves or otherwise. We could use this as an overflow if maybe we have some in the capital, the main section here working. You know what I'm talking about. But you've seen us build countless residential areas. This is boring. Now, above it, though, we are actually going to be building something quite interesting, a recreational hall, including a roulette table, a nice billiards table, some dartboards, but most importantly and most interesting, a movie theater. This is why we bought this gigantic-ass television, so everyone in the capital can join up here, except for the slaves, of course, and watch a nice movie together. I'm fairly happy with how it turned out, though it could use some finishing touches like rugs and art and things like that we'll throw in there eventually. Right now we have something more pressing to focus on. A visitor, it would seem. A strange one at that. This poor lass has made it into the capital because, well, she didn't seem like much of a threat, so we let her in, but she isn't here to stay. Well, at least not in one of our homes or anything like that. She's been sleeping out in the snow for the last 4 or 5 days, unfortunately. We would finally speak with her after so many days, and we just kind of forgot about her sleeping out in the icy cold, almost dying, and it turns out she has a bit of a sob story. Apparently, she escaped some type of cult, and she's scarred up, and blah 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 blah. We felt bad for her, so we took pity on her and allowed her to join us here. I must say that the Empress seems to have a soft spot for broken things. Welcome to the revolution, Bristle, you poor deformed creature. You made a good choice in your empires, the one true empire, of course, as the Shattered would have locked you in a cage and took you all around the planet in some type of carnival festival. Not us, though. We plan on using your talents. It would seem that her cult really did quite a number on her. Not only does she have quite a few scars, but she's also missing both of her eyes. Not to worry, our new friend, as we have just the fella for you. This is Viet, and he has one eye now, but it is definitely not the one he was born with. I think you two will get along quite nicely. Now, Bristle here isn't all scars and mangled flesh. She also has an ability to shape flesh. Essentially, she can turn corpses into flesh beast. Perhaps a demonstration is in order, though. Yes, I think that'll do quite nicely if we're in a pinch on the battlefield and we need something to distract our enemies. Speaking of which, this war is damn near over. By this point, our armies have conquered almost every single last remaining stronghold on the planet that the Shattered hold dear and near to their hearts. As a matter of fact, I believe we're about to witness their last final base fall. No doubt a hard-fought battle, definitely one that shall go down in history. Oh yeah, whereas before the Shattered had quite a foothold on the planet, now there is nothing but a sea of black flags with our beautiful star RimWorld symbol. The true Empire has returned. Although, even though we've taken all their bases, that doesn't mean the Shattered are completely gone. They actually have about 4 or so cities left on the planet. I think it's time for one great big attack, all in unison. And thanks to the new ships we've been working on, which took quite a while, mind you, I think we have just enough to do that. The Albatross is packed to the gills with our ghouls as well as the Empress. It would seem that the others in the skips are going to be falling behind just a little. That's alright, more fun for Jenny and her barbed ghouls. Immediately after landing, they would begin seeking out any soldier they could of the Shattered and ripping them to absolute shreds. Meanwhile, the Empress had called in reinforcements to help her track down all of the enemies throughout the city. Things were getting a little bit cramped, but it felt good fighting side by side with her very own army. As the hordes of the city's defense force began pouring into the square, we released our armada of wargs, ripping them apart side by side with our ghouls. Our old foe fought bravely and valiantly, which is more than we could normally say for them. I suppose since these cities were all that they had remaining, they were fighting harder than usual, though it wouldn't do them any good, of course. We would order our brave men and women to quickly gather around the Albatross out of danger as we were calling in some fire support. Bombing the absolute dog shit out of the city and its inhabitants really helped out quite a bit. We would also call in even more reinforcements to the city. And as time passed, hours and hours went by, and the killing never stopped. It was an absolute bloodbath. Eventually, though, we had killed everyone within a 1 or 2 mile radius, and we decided to regroup for a moment and take a quick little break. Can't have a war and conquering of a city on an empty stomach. Everyone had to have a quick bite to eat, as well as maybe a quick nap or so. By the time nightfall finally came around, our skip ships had arrived as well, late to the party per usual. Not to worry though, you'll still be quite useful. There's plenty of enemies to kill, and we've even heard tell that the Shattered Stellarch is in this city somewhere. We just need to flush them out. Now that we've stirred up the rat's den, we just need to leave a quick mousetrap for them. No pun intended. Well, maybe a little bit. Remember that anti-grain warhead detonation device we got in like episode 2? Time to use it. Oh, it made things a bit smoky, huh? Well, looks like we caught a Stellarch yet. It's a shame that we didn't get to kill them by our own hands, and/or with our own rifle, but this entire destructive war has been basically us bombing them anyhow, so who cares? I must say, though we didn't get a good look at them, I think that this crown fits my head much better than it ever could have theirs. With this city completely demolished and in absolute ruins, it's time for us to go back home. Not really much for us to do here now. We will be leaving some troops behind, though, to pick up the pieces and to take over the territory. As we were flying back home, though, it would seem that our other armies had great success destroying the few remaining shattered cities, and they are now abandoned and also in complete ruins. We have finally won. As we finally return back home, hanging up our hats for the time being for a great big celebration, a massive party in the throne room, for the sun shines on a brand new day, and on a brand new empire, reclaiming our rightful place and our iron grip on the planet, this place and its peoples and its resources and its everything, every single shred of dirt, every blade of grass and drop of water is ours. It all belongs to the new Imperial Order. Fortune favors the bold, as they say. The Empire has been rebuilt. Was that ambitious enough for you? Was that bold enough? Well, if it isn't my impervious Imperial subjects, welcome back to the one and true Empire for our final episode. Today, my friends, we are going to be enslaving somebody. As I'm sure you remember, last episode we finally beat the Shattered Empire and founded the true Imperial Order here. And today we need to start doing the same with a few other factions and populations, like all these waster pirates and what have you, but we don't want to just kill them all. We need a workforce. But whoa, Nelly, you don't buy a wagon first without your horse. First and foremost, we need to upgrade our new city district here. As you can see, we have a lot of space. And it is within this space that we plan on building a few new residential areas. These small, close quarters homes, as we've built many times before throughout this series, but in this particular case are only going to be slaves' quarters, just like the ones right next to them. And as you can see, nothing too fancy, really. We really just need enough slaves who can help us with growing all of our crops, and most importantly, Devil Strand, of course, as it is now our main export from the city, or at least the main export that makes us a lot of money, and I'm talking a lot. But after several days of hard labor, we finally have these new residential quarters finished for our up-and-coming slave population. Projects like this should go a lot faster once we fill all these beds. Of course, though, we're going to need plenty of work for our new slave populace, so we are going to be working on some new fields. In these fields here, in the bottom left-hand corner, we're actually going to be planting corn to continue feeding us all. Since we're growing our population with some forced labor workers, we're going to need to feed those workers as well, obviously. And with more crops, we also need more storage areas, so we quickly threw together some storage crates here in this small little weird part in the road that I honestly didn't know what else to do anything with, so this is what we're doing. Now, as we were building all these new projects in the slave district, we were notified that our soldier Kyphones had an affair with our slave Azzy from the Shattered. And as one might imagine, this is a great big massive no-no, and she needs to be punished for this horrendous sin. Now, some possible punishments: we could tar and feather her, we could flog her in the streets in front of all to see, we could execute her, cut off her head, lethal injection. There's a lot of different options, I'm gonna be honest with you, but we're not the Shattered, right? We're not the old Empire, we are the one and true Imperial Order. So instead, I think maybe just a quick and easy demotion is in order, right? Something simple like building her own little home out here in the slave district, and she's not allowed to live in the inner city with the rest of us. She is going to be our only person that's over the slave district, and we could make her commander of all the slaves. Who cares? It's a punishment. Who gives a shit? Besides, we're gonna need somebody out here that can hold down the law and order while the rest of us are frolicking on the inside, enjoying some nice food and wine and things of that sort, as you might imagine. But hold your horses. Breaking news. We have a pregnancy. Apparently, Viet managed to get Foos pregnant. I'd say managed, like I don't know how it happened, but it's incredible. This is our first baby of the new Imperial Order, and I'm just kind of tickled, you know? So Foo's body is going to need a little bit of time to cook up that baby. In the meantime, what say you we start invading some waster pirates, eh? I'm thinking maybe we capture a few settlements, maybe just raid a few and capture prisoners instead. Let's see how we're feeling. Unfortunately for the wasters, though, they are not near as technologically capable as the Shattered were, so they didn't really stand much of a chance. Now, they were putting up a pretty decent fight here and there, but Yes, indeed, easily turning thriving waster pirate cities into charred hunks of ash. You know, in most cases, though, it seems like they're still trying to live there, even though the cities are basically nothing but ruins at this point. You gotta hand it to them. Actually, come to think of it, they have to hand it to us, and by it, I mean anything that we want, or we're going to murder all of them. And in a lot of cases, that does also mean their populace that we're going to be enslaving, as we've already discussed, of course. Our first rounds of assault against the waster pirate cities and villages and towns and so on and yada 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 ended up giving us about 9 or so slaves. These are the ones that are useful. We took a lot of them in, but I let them out in our other cities from the forces that captured them because, well, they didn't have any decent skills. I don't really care if they execute them or send them to the labor camps or whatever. At the very least, they need to be able to haul, and in this case, as you can see, with this small force of slaves that we have just from the first few attacks, they are easily able to haul in all of our taxes from a cycle or two. This is exactly what we needed. Oh shit. Looks like Bristol is hostile with us. You remember Bristol from last episode, right? A kind stranger from a cult that they said they escaped from, so we took her in. Yeah, her. Well, looks like she's letting out some type of devious dark howls and is calling for someone. Well, I suppose our friend Aiden Schnell 1015 was right when they said not to trust Bristle. I should have listened. We immediately began encircling her and beating her to the ground, but she wasn't the threat. Out of the dark in the south, near the city's entrance, arose an army of sight stealers. We began doing everything that we could to push them back and stop them from entering the city where they could go into the shadows, hide and sneak up behind any of us and kill us at any time. We threw flares, we burned them, we fired our rifles at them, and I must say that under these circumstances we generated an incredible response, funneling them through the entrance and firing at them almost like a kill box. But it's not, and we would end up killing the majority of them. Well, it would seem that Bristle's stupid little plan didn't work after all. Good thing that we caught them all quite quickly, otherwise our empire might have crumbled before it really got started. But not all of the sight stealers were dead. Many of them were just simply incapacitated. What to do. I have an idea. We're going to capture as many of them as possible and take them into their milking stations. We can use them to generate bioferrite, which we can use for anything we want, and we can also sell it. Although we did end up capturing so many of them, in fact, that we had to make some makeshift holding pens in our storage facilities. We'll get around to making them proper homes soon, though. As for right now, our top priority is punishing Bristle. What do we do with her? Right? She does have some keen abilities, but she also kinda tried to sabotage our capital city by invading it with an army of unnatural creatures. Let's turn her into a ghoul. Yes, indeed. At least now she won't be totally useless, right, Bristle? Good on you, girl. That's the spirit. Now then, as for the sight stealers that she tried to take over with, we are going to create some proper milking stations in our milking mountain here. That's what I've been referring to it as in my head. Until now, I've finally said it out loud. I hope you're not judging me too hard. And we quickly threw them into their cells so we can get that sweet, succulent bioferrite. However, all these new bioferrite milking machines require power, and since we're expanding the city by, well, a lot, we have an entirely new district that needs lights and all kinds of other electronics. We need to work on producing more power. So we're actually going to be making some geothermal generators on the outside of the city. Not to worry though, as they're going to be well protected by many a slate wall and steel door, so they should be good to go. These should keep the city powered furthermore with many years to come. We'll probably end up making some other types of power generation, like adding in more wood-fired generators as backup, but I think this is good. Now, given how large the city is at this point, we do need some extra batteries though in the milking mountain. That way we have somewhere to put all the power that our geothermal generators are, well, generating. So we ended up throwing some more of those in. Would you look at that? The Ivory Marvel, the capital city. It looks so wonderful. I love it ever so much, and it's going quite well, including our slave district, which I almost completely forgot forgot about. We need to continue filling it with slaves. Now, we do have some other options for populations to enslave, like the pig pirates and the nudish tribes, as we're at war with the waster pirates, who are not long for this world, I might add. Oh, what's this? It would appear that the pig pirates want to have some peace talks. Okay. The Empress herself, along with her diplomatic entourage, has decided to go, and the peace talks were described as being triumphant, which I would expect nothing less, seeing how they've watched us take out the Shattered and now basically make the Waster Pirates extinct. I think it's the right thing for them. Ah, does it feel good to be back, baby. We now have our royal subjects, the Outlanders and the Pig Union, both of which our allies, both of which at our mercy and even under our command. Not only did the Pig Union not want to die because we would obviously kill them and nuke them into the Stone Age with anti-grain warheads, but they were also very eager to have a new trading partner. They even sent us a slaver. I suppose a little birdie must have told them about our slave district project and how we plan on exporting plenty of goods with those slaves. I told them I was the little birdie. We would end up purchasing 2 new additions to the district, and as a courtesy they even gave us one of their mercenaries who is currently adorning some Imperial Trooper attire. Don't mind if I do. Well, since our new allies being so courteous with us, I thought we would return the favor, and we would start hiring and recruiting many of their pig mercenaries into our ranks, equipping them with the trooper armor and an SMG. Nothing too fancy, unlike our own Imperial troops, but a nice contract of us working together and establishing this relationship with them is going to be great. And not only that, but having their assistance makes it so much easier for us to take over these waster towns and cities. Of course, we were willing to share plenty of territory and loot with our new snorting friends. But the populace? Oh, no, my friends. The populace is ours to take. This time around, we only had about 5 useful slaves, but that is just enough to begin work on a brand new field, 2 fields technically, of Devil's Strand in the lower right-hand corner of the district. These fields and these enslaved workers are going to be making us a lot of money. All that, along with our taxes. I mean, needless to say, we are obviously the richest faction in government on the planet. I mean, I think that goes without saying, right? However, more slaves also means more trouble if they all rebel. So we're going to be working on some new defenses. We are doubling up on our already doubled up walls, and we are building a shit ton of turrets on the inside of this district to prepare us for any mishaps. Besides, I mean, we would rather see the turrets tear them apart than see them tear us apart if there's only 1 or 2 of us within the district during that time. And as I was admiring the new baby yaks that we've had for some time and the new names that we gave to them, we actually ended up having a grand slave rebellion. I swear to God this isn't scripted, but I am very glad that this happened about a day after we finished up these defenses. And yes, we only had about 2 soldiers in the slave district when it happened, so I am very grateful for them once more. Our turrets literally began shredding them apart. I saw arms and thumbs and eyes flying every which way. Well, now that's just, that's unfortunate. The rebellion was put down rather quickly, mostly in part to the fact that not all of the slaves rebelled. It was a good portion of them, but people like Azzy here, they didn't really want to fight us. Rightfully so. But not all of the slaves ended up dying. Some of them were bleeding out in our fields, and we started tending to their wounds. We'll try not to hold any grudges against them, but if they do that again, we might just execute the lot of them. Now, as for the slaves who did die, we took them to the body pile and disposed of them. Ah, can you smell that? That smells like a failed uprising. Speaking of defenses, while we're working on such, I think I'm going to build a great big shield right in the middle of town, right in front of the Archotech monolith. It would actually end up costing us the last of the advanced components that we currently have, but that's not really an issue, as our allies are sure to give us some. We could purchase some from Orbital traders, or we could just make our own, who cares? Besides, it is well worth it. As you can see, when activated, it covers a pretty decent portion of the city, most important part of the city, if you will. As you can see, it's actually protecting the bedroom and the throne room of the empress, so not much need for any anywhere else, though I guess we could chuck a few here and there, who knows. Sticking with our theme of working our defenses, we started building 2 large autocannons as well. Giant autocannons is actually what they're called, around our defenses. Now, we might not really need to do this because we could call in our reinforcements any time that we like, but we have heard intel around the planet and rumor that the Waster pirates are setting up a pretty large last final hurrah against us, so I think these will be nice to have. But they had better not attack right now. Why? Because Foos and Viet are having their sweet baby. Oh, the miracle of childbirth. How sweet. Such a happy and beautiful family. All thanks to me. Us, the Empire. Hello there, sweet soul. You are going to be our new best buddy. We need to name you. How about Jenny? I think you and the Empress are going to be fast friends. Oh, look, she's already taken a liking to you. Such a sweet moment. It could almost make you forget that we're conquering an entire nation full of people. Almost. But I'm afraid, my friends, we must snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Anyhow, though, we have basically completely finished off the Waster pirates. An entire nation torn apart, other than a few abandoned cities, which, as I mentioned earlier, they are extremely reluctant to leave. Though, as I think about it, instead of invading these abandoned cities, what if we just left them there to their own devices and let them kind of just live there? We'll oppress them, of course, and stomp out any new settlements they come up with, but these abandoned cities they live in could fuel our slave population. Now, obviously, we could end up doing the same with the nudist cannibal pirate tribe, whatever they are, but the thing is, I just really don't care about them, and instead I think we're just going to conquer them and kill every single one of them that we find. I think that that is a much more fitting punishment for the crime and sin of eating flesh, human flesh, I might add. And as you've seen, we basically conquered all of the cannibal nudist in one night, about 2 nights to be exact. Now you might be asking yourself, Rat Daddy, how in the hell did you pull that off? These Neanderthal bastards, surely they're stronger than that. Let me show you. Yeah, it turns out when you drop anti-grain warheads on all of their pitiful little villages, they give up pretty easy. Yet another of our enemies defeated. Our last enemy, funny enough. The Empire is finished. We have retaken this planet, and it is ours. We have 2 allies who are under our dominion, and we could easily stomp them out if we had to, but we shouldn't have to. I think we're finished, guys. I really do think we are. The capital city's all filled out and looking great, and we have all the research, the money, everything we could ever want. What else is there? Oh, I had almost forgot about you Waster pirates. I suppose this is supposed to be that one last final hurrah battle that we had heard about. Oh, and it looks like they have plenty of soldiers too. Maybe this actually will be pretty fun. Upon further inspection, they even have some of the last few remaining members of the Shatter among them. Oh, joyous days. This is going to be fun. As they began to approach the city entrance, our autocannons would start pounding them with bullets, and we also called in our reinforcements, and this was sure to be one of the, if not the, largest battles that we have ever conducted, not just in this series, but in any series. It was literally an absolute bloodbath, thanks to our cyclone miniguns, autocannons, and anything and everything else that these soldiers had. We eviscerated the Waster pirates, turned them into a fine mist on the ground like strawberry pudding. After witnessing the absolute torment in the gigantic tox cloud that was forming, that was their soldiers being ripped limb for limb by our wargs and ghouls and being shot to death, they did the only thing they could do. They left. And that might be the smartest thing that the Waster pirates have done this entire episode. They fled back to their cities, where it will come for them shortly to enslave a few of them, but will leave what they need necessary to produce more Waster pirates. This is kinda dark. But anyways, after defeating them, really all we had left were a few wounded soldiers, emphasis on a few, as you can see, and we had quite a big mess to clean up. A bit anticlimactic, as they didn't even put a dent in our armor, metaphorically. Well guys, I suppose we truly have done it, haven't we? We rebuilt the shattered empire. Thanks for watching. Hello, I just want to pop in at the end of this video and say thank you ever so much for watching this video and this series and supporting it and supporting the channel and the series and just me in general. I love you guys, and I hope you have enjoyed it. Seems like as we were going along with this series, a lot of you were really enjoying it, so I hope that that is indeed the case. The supercut here, of course, is just coming out right after the series, but if you're watching the supercut because you hadn't seen the series before, I also hope that you've enjoyed. So, yeah. But I love you guys. Thanks for watching. See you later. Goodbye.